Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
Yeah.
Man, on
Talk
the
about
Nintendo Switch. Big, first huge RPG for the Nintendo Switch if you don't count Breath of the Wild, which I don't think you should, but that's a matter of debate. Anyway, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, the last big hurrah of the year. Joe Juba, how much time have you spent with this game so far?
Oh, man. So I'm basically at the end, though I have not actually seen credits yet.
Okay.
It's one of those games that's hard to judge precisely. Like my hour counter right now says I'm at about 125. But I know I left it on like while I went to bed one night, which can be a problem. And it's also a game that has like there's some idle time in there because there's an element of this game that has that's kind of like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood stuff where it's like missions are happening in real time. So there are times when I just let the game idle and let that happen while I like had some lunch and stuff like that. Wow. So it's hard to say precisely, but I think that this is like probably 80 to 100 hours for most players.
Oh my God. Okay. So these are, it's not fair to call it early impressions, but not quite final impressions from you yet. The review will be on the site sometime soon, right?
Right. I mean, by the time people are listening to this, it should be on the site.
Okay.
But it is not.
We're taping this early.
I am in the closing stretch right now. So,
Joe, I think a lot of people are looking forward to close out the year with Nintendo, who's had a hell of a year so far.
Yeah.
Just to jump in and be like, okay, huge Nintendo RPG. Should they jump into this game?
Whoa. So that's tricky because in a lot of cases, I think whether or not you should play this game depends a lot on how much you like, not just like Japanese RPGs, but like some pretty old school Japanese RPGs. Monolith Soft, the developer Monolith Soft, like some of their old stuff in particular, like Xenosaga and stuff, in the sense that it's very complex.
Really?
So this is not the kind of game that I would say. I mean, like if you do want to call Zelda an RPG, right? That would be a very accessible sort of RPG, right? That's an RPG in which the sort of elements of progression have been distilled down in a way that's pretty like easy to pick up, understand, and get into.
It's distilled down to the point of not being an RPG, but yes.
I'm just quit derailing the argument.
All right, go ahead. We know how you feel about
starting with that baseline, because I agree with you on that front. But so this is sort of on the Xenoblade, sort of on the other end of the spectrum. And to be clear, like I like this facet of this game.
Joe loves RPG systems.
Yeah. So like the fact that this game has so many different like levels of interaction on it, I think really works in its favor. It's like, just to give a few examples, like out of the gate, you've like one of the main forms of progression in this game is like, okay, so it's about your character who's something called a driver, who has like an ally that's a blade. And in this world, there are lots of drivers and there are lots of blades.
Trainers and Pokemon.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's a good way to frame it.
Okay.
So, but imagine if instead of just like going out and catching Pokemon, you were going out and catching... I'm not going to keep the Pokemon thing going because it's going to get convoluted. But with that idea in mind, you go out and you collect crystals, and then you like basically like open the crystals and you see what blade you got inside, right? And sometimes they're unique blades, and those are things that you want. And then there's a whole category of sort of like generic blades.
And how much real money do you have to pay for one of these crystals?
$0.
My God.
Yeah, no, you collect them in the game, but it does have that sort of loot box element of like, oh, I'm opening a legendary one. I hope it's one of the unique blades.
That sounds like it could be fun.
Yeah. So that part's fun. And each one of the blades has its own unique skill tree.
Wow.
That you progress down and get stuff, and sometimes it's just things like, perform a combo, which you're going to do anyway as you're playing. So those things sort of happen automatically. But then sometimes to like keep a blade's progression going, it's things like, do this specific quest or do 3 nice things for townspeople around town or stuff like that. So it's like, so there's a level of it that's kind of automatic, but also a level of it that's kind of intentional. And that's just for the blades. But then beyond that, your characters also have individual skill trees that have like an upgrade currency that you spend. Their weapons have associated skills, and there's a unique currency you use to like upgrade skills for your weapons.
A rebuilding. Oh, go ahead.
And there's that whole mercenary group thing that I was talking about like sending them out and as time goes on. So it's like all of these different systems that you can just sort of play with and interact with and delve into.
Is it building to the point where you're saying it's too complex and kind of messy?
No, well, so here's what it's building to. I love all of that. Like, I love digging into that stuff. The problem for me ends up being the fact that all of that complexity ultimately like is not really in service to a very entertaining gameplay experience.
Minute to minute?
Yeah, I mean, like, just what the game is content-wise is disappointing. So let's say that a lot of this, you're spending all this time upgrading your blades. You want them to get stronger. You want them to get better abilities. You want their healing to improve or whatever.
Blade 2, Blade 3.
But all of that feeds into combat. But combat really isn't that fun.
It's basically the same as Xenoblade Chronicles 1, right? Where it's kind of just a hot bar, waiting for things to cool down, getting in position, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's a lot like that. But I think part of the problem is that like I'm similar to that too. Like a lot of it's built on like interaction between party members and stuff. But that ultimately ends up being a little bit of a problem because it's like so much of their combat system is built on the idea of like, okay, you wait for cooldowns, you build up meters. When this meter gets high enough, you can do this. When you chain 3 of those things together, you can do this. But when those things are the same, then you can do that. You know, so it's like in theory, all of that is like exciting. And in practice, what that ends up being is that like in order to bring all that stuff to the surface, the battles just end up having to be like kind of long and uneventful. You know, like in order for you to really make use of every like facet of the combat system, you have to spend so much time just like in combat against enemies that aren't particularly challenging. They just take a long time to beat because the developers want to give you that time, I assume, to build up your meters and do the cool stuff.
And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so complaint about combat, but when combat is 60 hours of your life,
yeah,
I mean, that's brutal.
Yeah, that's brutal. And then another part of it too is like again, it sounds cool to say, oh man, these blades have like you can do specific quests to unlock different parts of the blades thing. But like for most of the time, if there's like a thing that's locked on your blade that you want to unlock, like a progression node or whatever, most of the time what you're doing is just something on the order of like, go kill 5 of these things. Do this 5 times, collect 20 pieces of wood. You know, it's like the content that they're actually populating for you to engage with isn't particularly interesting. And the same thing goes for all the side quests that you're doing. Again, lots of side quests you can do, get experience, items, money, all of that sounds good.
Yeah.
Until when you're doing it, it feels like I'm playing an MMO from like 12 years ago.
Yeah.
When it's
I know a game like that.
Yeah, where it's just like a bunch of kill quests and, you know, go fetch this, bring it back, go do and then there are like nested collection quests where it's like collect 3 of these things. Oh, but to collect this one, you actually have to collect 5 of those things.
But this isn't like main path stuff, right?
It isn't. It isn't. It's not part of the main story. But you also can't mainline the main, like you can't just go story mission to story mission. At some point, you are going to hit a threshold at which you need to go engage with some side content to like get levels so you can progress with the main story. It's not, I didn't actually play Xenoblade Chronicles X, the last
Wii U
one, but my impression of that from talking to Matt Miller, who reviewed it, was that it was like very, very grindy in terms of progression. And like, I don't get the sense that this was not a pervasive thing for me. It's not like it's not like Assassin's Creed Origins where I felt like every time I wanted to do a main story mission, I had to go and do a bunch of stuff I didn't want to do to get there. But there were definitely times and it was like, well, I better spend the next few hours like doing some side quests here in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, like because I'm going to need that going forward to this next main area or something.
Well, what about that main campaign, the main story? Are the big beats great? I mean, Xenoblade Chronicles 1, it was so long, but there were some good highs within that experience. What do you think about the big beats of the story here?
I feel like the story is completely passable.
That's rough, Joe.
Is it a true sequel to Xenoblade? Because X was not, right? X was like
X is like a weird
standalone.
kind of offshoot. Yeah.
There are elements. So I have not finished the original Xenoblade Chronicles either. I should say too, but to people who are in the same boat, and I think that there are a lot of people in the same boat as me with like having the Switch, lots of people talking about this game. I think you can jump into it. There are nods that I know are a part of the series. There's like the furry Nopon characters or whatever.
Lovable, cute things.
I hate them, but they are all over the place in this game.
But it's not like the same world, but it's the same concept of like roaming around on these giant titans. And they're the continents.
Exactly. It feels so like if there are major story connections, at least from like the research I've done, I haven't been able to surface like to find things that are just like, oh well, that is obviously this, or it's important that it takes place here in a timeline or something. Like
it's a very Monolith thing to have like the light nod to the previous series, and it's weird that this is a direct sequel and it even still seems to be going that light nod territory.
Yeah.
Especially because I was talking to Joe, like the ending of the first Xenoblade, without spoiling it, like it's insane. It's just like this weird framing for that world that seems so specific to that one world with Mechonis and Bionis, and so I don't understand how there are all these other titans roaming around.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even clear if it is like the exact same world or not.
Yeah,
you know,
but even stuff
it might fall more into like spiritual successor territory, though it has the sequel name.
It
you know?
has number 2 on it.
But
people love it too, so maybe more in the Final Fantasy realm. But even stuff like I saw the main lady character there has like Zohar on her necklace.
Oh yeah,
Xenosaga stuff. Is there still like a lot of light nods like that to previous?
Yeah. There's one. There's something I can't spoil. It's not a big deal, but I guess embargo's up. I could probably say that. Like there's a silhouette, so it's like all of the different unique blades you can get.
Yeah.
Right. There's an album where you can sort of go and see them. So the ones you've unlocked, you see clearly, and the ones you haven't unlocked, you only see a silhouette. So I haven't unlocked this yet, so I can't say 100% sure, but one of those silhouettes looks an awful lot like Cosmos.
Really?
Oh,
So-
that'd be cool.
But Namco owns her, right?
I don't know. Like I don't know if
What are they doing with it?
I don't know. And like
Project
I said,
X Zone 2.
like I said, I could be wrong. I haven't unlocked her, but like it really
They're at least
looks
trying
a
to
lo-
tease fans with
Yeah,
it.
it
Oh, that's
looks a lot
interesting.
like that character.
So one of the
So-
things when this game was announced, I think a lot of people had the reaction of like, how is Monolith? They helped out with Breath of the Wild's development just to tie everything together here.
And Splatoon 2.
And
by the way.
Splatoon 2.
Super weird.
They also, Xenoblade Chronicles X came out 2 years ago. It wasn't that long ago at all. Like, how are they able to crank out this game? Does it feel cheap in any way?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, let's write down that answer.
Well,
what
no,
about it? Like
I
the
mean,
art, or what do you?
The thing that you mentioned about this, or the point you brought up about the story, I think is an important one, where it feels like a completely serviceable, ultimately sort of predictable story. You know, it's like they do the thing where it's, oh no, are you talking about that person? And then you have to wait a good like 10 hours before you find out who that person is that they were even talking about. And a character who wears a mask, and it's some big reveal when he takes the mask off, even if you don't recognize the character. It's a moment, you know.
Joe, you've also played 300,000 JRPGs. Is there a universe where like maybe someone that's played a couple here and there, like, if I check this out, it'll feel not just too rote?
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly a possibility, but I guess the important thing about it is that regardless of your familiarity with the genre outside of just, like regardless of your outside familiarity, the story also does a lot of hand tipping for the things that are coming. So it's just like, even if you've never played a JRPG, if you are just a person with like reasoning skills and can interpret cues that are given to you,
Is that you, listener? Write in to podcastagameformer.com.
a lot of things are not going to like be the big surprises that they're kind of positioned as, you know.
Okay.
So
Also, I think I still want to play this game. Oh, go ahead.
other things about the cheapness of it.
Okay. Yeah.
There are just, and these are going to sound nitpicky, so I want to be clear that these are not like game-breaking experiences for me or anything.
Yeah.
But things that feel weird to me are stuff like there's no way to, at least that I found, to like change button layout. So one issue for me is like I'm conditioned in RPGs, like that top button is my menu button.
Of course.
And in this one, that's automatically your fast travel button, and you have to like press the the plus or whatever to like open up the menu, which not a game changer at all, but at the same time, I definitely opened up the fast travel menu a lot, like so often that it was getting frustrating for me, and I just wished I could change it.
It's
right?
the bulk of your 120 hours.
Yeah, exactly. No, and then other things like so I said this is it's a very complicated game, and that works in its favor sometimes. But then like let's say that you want to go back and be like, okay, how did this work? How did this blade combo work? And what elements are like opposing elements?
Yeah.
It doesn't like keep these things in some sort of like repository for you to reference. You have to buy like tutorial messages from vendors that just tell you things like one of them is seriously like basics of battle. 800 gold, and then you just like buy it, and it like gives you this thing. It's like weird things like that. It's like, like why is it like
you got to
this?
sell something?
Yeah, but it's like so that kind of thing just strikes me as to your point. It feels like those are sort of the corners they cut, are some general like usability things that just maybe didn't get totally vetted through the development process.
Yeah, I also heard on the 8-4 Play podcast, they're talking about how it's a surprisingly slow burn. It is a slow ramp up out of the gate. Did you experience that as well?
Yeah. I mean,
it's JRPG.
I would say there's nothing here that is out of the ordinary in terms of like how they build the narrative of it. It is a little strange how long it takes to actually sort of unfold all of the systems.
Yeah.
That takes a long time. Like the mercenary group that I was talking about, I think that happens. I think that becomes available to you in like chapter 4 or 5,
which is
like maybe a little less than halfway through the game.
Holy cow.
So it's, like major things are still sort of opening up to you.
Didn't X have that issue too? Like you didn't unlock the mechs until you were like halfway
super.
through
They
the
were
game.
so expensive, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a long time. In X, I think there was like a really complicated quest that you had that didn't open up until a certain point.
Weird.
Also, like, yeah. So weird stuff like that. I mean, ultimately, I really like the stuff that's going on behind the curtain. Like all of those different systems and stuff I enjoy digging into, and that's really sort of what propelled me through this game.
The highlight of the experience for you.
It is just like how good, and I felt this way about like the Xenosaga series also, specifically the first one, in that like how interesting they make it to just go into their menus and like get invested in how your characters are developing and the sort of different ways they give you control over that. That is good, and I wish that the way that applied, I wish the game that they sort of built around that was more captivating.
Is the word disappointing too much for you?
I mean, disappointing's relative because it depends on what your expectations are going into it, right? So like I would say it's a pretty average. It levels out as a pretty average sort of serviceable game for me.
God, that's sad. I mean, Kyle, I think you're with me. I think there's a lot of Switch owners out there that are like, they're wrapping up Mario Odyssey. They played Zelda, dabbled with Splatoon. And it's like, man, I could go for just sinking my teeth into a huge JRPG.
And
especially
seriously,
being on the go is like kind of cool with it too.
If that is the mood you are in, like this game scratches that itch. It does that. Like it is.
It's just not going to knock your socks off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like it is an average RPG in the sense that like it will be familiar to you in some ways if you've played this genre a lot before. It does some things that are really interesting, sort of counterbalanced by things that it does that are sort of frustrating.
Yeah. Xenoblade Chronicles 2,
I
everybody.
have one last important
please.
question.
Yeah.
Can you change the protagonist's pants?
No.
That's a deal breaker.
Whatever your protagonist is wearing is determined by the story.
I have a question too, actually, since we're doing questions at the end.
Yeah. Let's do it.
You know how the
Open
podcast
floor.
works. Questions
Open the floor.
and involvement at the end.
So you said you have these loot box kind of thing to get the weapons, right?
Mhm.
Is it potentially that you could get, so by that could you get like the best weapon right away, or is there some logic behind that as well?
There's logic. It's not totally randomized because like think of it this way: is that there are 3 tiers of crystal. Each one gives you an increasingly higher chance of getting a particularly good, like unique blade. If you don't get a unique one, you just get one of the garbage ones that you send off on merc missions. But there are ways to influence that. Again, the game explained it once, but that was very early, and I wanted another explanation for it and did not have a reference by which to figure
you
it out.
gotta use that screenshot button early on. Grab all those tutorials with that.
It's a good idea,
button.
actually.
No, actually the game, side note on that, does a good job of, in most cases, layering and reinforcing previous things. So apart from this one case that I'm talking about, especially with the way combat works, it does a good job of like, hey, you've been doing this for a while now. You understand how this works. Let's add something new to it. Okay, let's add something new to that. So it's like, it doesn't overload you with it, but it also doesn't bog you down in tutorials just teaching you how the game works either.
Yeah.
But to Dan's point, there is a way you can sort of influence your likelihood. There's something called like ideas.
Slow down, Brainiac.
Ideas?
It's basically an X and Y axis. That's
Ideas. Yeah, we get it, Joe.
bravery, truth, compassion, and justice, or something. So, as your other blades level up, they contribute to like your character's overall like score on these points. And the higher your score, the better your likelihood of unlocking like specific. So this is the game's way of basically saying like, I think you need a certain threshold of certain idea scores before you can unlock particularly.
Okay.
The more
powerful
ideas
things.
you have, the better your ideas.
I don't. But again, like I said, this is what I've like sussed out from it.
Yeah.
But I wish the game gave me a clearer way to sort of go back and like, okay, that's what was happening there.
Mhm.
Yeah, Dan, have you ever encountered a cutesy Nopon-like character in any RPG that you've appreciated?
I tend to hate the cutesy characters too, but I don't know. I'm sure if we count like Mog or something, yeah.
Okay, you like just Mog from 6.
I'm sure there's many other. Final Fantasy has some cute characters that I like.
Chocobos, do they count in that category?
The-
Or
don't
top
talk, though.
cutesy?
What's the,
I
the
think-
little cat that lets you change your name and sells you stuff in Secret of Mana? He's cool, right? Like,
I think a critical point on this is whether or not those characters speak, because like Mog in Final Fantasy VI is just a text box, so you can just imagine it sounds whatever way you want to. Versus like you cannot tune out the like terrible way these like the Nopon talk.
Yeah.
Right? Or Tama from Final Fantasy or World of Final Fantasy is another one. There's just so many of those. It's like, why do they always have to have these like just great like grating high pitchy sort of voices, and B has some weird like quirk to the way they speak, so you just can't understand them properly.
What do you want, like Michael Madsen to voice those things? Like, what do you want?
They just all say random words, like at the start of their sentences.
Yeah.
It's
But why do they exist to begin with? Do you think it's just people want something that can make a cute plushie sold in stores?
I wonder if it just might not be a cultural divide. Like those kinds of things may be very popular in Japan, where these games are coming from, and they come here, and there's just a different perception of it.
What about
I
like
don't know.
Persona? There's that cat, right? Mona, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind
Yeah.
of fall in that category? That cat's all right.
That's-
People like that thing.
Yeah, I guess. No, you're right. You're
That's
right.
maybe
There it is.
maybe the one we found
Roll
one.
Shadow.
Oh, yeah.
Except Mona isn't actually like. I don't feel like she's like engineered to be that sort of
Yeah.
like cutesy comic relief sort of character, but I guess in a way,
Maybe.
I think
With
it's
some
I think it's the
caveats.
same category, but you're right. There's a huge difference between Mona and like, some squeaky little thing that just babbles incoherently constantly.
Hey, over here!
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version and listen to new episodes airing every Thursday. We cover big games on the horizon, games that we've just reviewed. We have long-form developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So check it out every Thursday.